What happens when the moratorium on foreclosures and evictions is lifted or are lifted? What's the proper grammar?
I would say
That's
are
the
lifted,
first question.
Are lifted.
Yeah.
Because it's plural, but
yeah,
whatever.
It doesn't matter.
What happens when the moratorium is lifted?
Yes.
Yes.
We're here for notes and investing, not grammar.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're in finance and not attorneys.
Yes. So I'm Ryan Harper here with KRISTIN and GERST on Passing Notes. This is the Passing Notes show. Even though Passing Notes group, we also have a mastermind group about note investing. So if you want information about that, just DM either one of us. Where every week, twice a week, we do in-person training and Q&A for everybody in the group. And then we also meet quite often, and you have access to KRISTIN for all your questions. So if you're looking to do notes, transition into a paper type of investing,
right?
This is the place to be. So today's topic is what exactly? Other than bad grammar.
Other than bad grammar, yeah. So the moratorium, which was done earlier this spring, and I heard that they're like, oh yeah, let's just stop all foreclosures and evictions while this is going on during the pandemic. And instantly I was like, that is a terrible plan. Terrible. So, there's always foreclosures in the mix. But if you just do a hard stop on them and say, we're not going to do these anymore, all of those will then fill up and backlog and then get released all at one time. It's great if it's a month or two, but we're talking about 9 months, 12 months.
And listening to that, it sounds kind of like a water hose, where if you kink the water hose, well, the water's still coming. But once you unkink it, it really flows. And I'm assuming, I'm not the expert, you are, but the whole, pretty much anything in our system, whether it be healthcare, banking, anything, if you have a wave of anything, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Correct.
Because like if you can have a seawall and the waves, it can block all those waves all the time, but as soon as a freaking tidal wave comes, your city's knocked out.
Or a tsunami. That's
tidal
huge.
wave, yeah.
No,
so and that's what I'm hearing.
And that's what we're looking at, and it's great if, okay, this was going to be over, right? It was going to be over this summer, but it's not over.
Right.
And it's continuing on. Now the CDC has said no evictions until January. So that means that all of these landlords are not getting rental payments.
Right. And this is one of those conversations I have quite regularly with people is, especially if they're not in real estate, who do you think owns all these houses? Is it, these big banks?
People are thinking
these
it's
hedge
big
funds. But the reality, it's people like KRISTIN. It's people like
Matt. A small-time investor. And a small-time investor might own 50.
Yeah.
But they also might own 5 or 10. It's so when they can't make those mortgage payments, they end up foreclosing. Their business goes bust.
Yeah.
And they end up losing all of that. They lose their income. That's their job.
Yeah. And
so it's more unemployment.
So, but right now, the banks, they're not allowed to foreclose. Mm-mm. But also the landlords, they're not allowed to evict. But who's going to get their shit first? The landlords trying to get their back pay or evict, or the banks trying to get their house or their money back.
Right.
The banks are going to, and again, in my opinion, just because, banks have the money, they've got the power, they've got the lawyers, they're going to have this thing on so fast. It's going to...
Right. No. And people are like, oh, it's not going to be as big of a deal as it was in 2008 because we've got so much equity in these houses. Right there, that should tell you they're going to foreclose extremely fast, because if they only owe, $75,000 on a $150,000 mortgage, and the bank sees, wow, I can double my money, or, at least get most of that back. If I foreclose on it, take it back, they're not going to be, offering, a lot of programs to investors. Now, homeowners, that might be a different story, right? But investment property, which there's a lot of investment houses out there.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are really going to take a hit.
So where do you see, because I remember the '08 horror stories about you had a bunch of investors who were making their payments, who were doing what they needed to be doing to run a successful business.
Right.
But when the banks had all these short sales and not short sales, all these subprime mortgages that were screwing them up, who's the first person they went to collect on? They went to investors that were making payments, like, hey, we need you to pay up for the full house. Like, but why? We're making our payments.
Right.
Well, the reason being is like, oh, well, we're going to go belly up because this whole population over here aren't paying.
Right. And so they can't call it on, say, a 30-year fixed. And I was never called on a mortgage. I never lost one. But on paper, I lost, if I had to sell, like, let's say that I had to sell for whatever reason, it's not making money, I just need to unload some of this, I lost 50% of value overnight. And that's what happens when you have a flood of foreclosures hitting the market, because all of a sudden, yeah, they've foreclosed on these. Well, they're going to sell them at a huge discount, typically 30-40% below where everything else is going, because they want to move them fast. Now, if they're in pristine condition, sure, they might ask for as much as they can. But if they're sitting on a backlog of, hundreds of thousands of foreclosures in the nation, these banks are going to move them as fast as they can.
So what happens though? So the whole topic of the day is what happens when the moratorium ends.
Right.
Like, we're doomed, we're screwed, run for the hills and become a prepper?
I think it's going to depend on what market you're in.
Mm-hmm.
How many, not every, so Texas lifted the moratorium, but not every county in Texas did. So, we're talking about Dallas County. Yeah, they're doing foreclosures again. So do we have a tsunami coming? Possibly we do still, because if all of a sudden the values of houses drop because lots of people are starting to lose their jobs, there's more layoffs coming, and these are higher end jobs. Before it was, okay, restaurant workers, and, they're probably more the rental market. But now we're going into companies where executives and people who...
That's one of the things I've been talking about from day one, because, a lot of my supplemental income at the moment comes from event planning. And like all summer long, hey, by the way, you're not allowed to do events.
Right.
So you've got a whole industry of individuals, whether that be performers, the technicians, the lighting, the film art, all those people that it takes to put on either a live production, a concert, a comedy thing, anything, that just are out of work. And then a lot of people are like, well, they should just get a job. It's like, if they're making $10,000, $12,000 a month doing the profession they've done for 20 years, and now you want them to go work at Starbucks? Like, it's just not, I mean, right. A, have a little empathy and compassion, but B, that does not make sense.
No. And then they're like, well, yeah, and so now I've got Starbucks on my resume. Is that a hole in my resume? Is it not? Is it better to leave it as a hole in my resume?
Right.
But, so what's happened recently? The $600 from the government, that ran out in July.
The 200, $300, whatever that was.
And then the extra $300, that's gone.
Well, $300 if you live in Texas, it was like, what, $200?
Yeah, whatever it ended up being.
I don't know. It just wasn't what they said it was going to be.
No. So we've got all supplemental. So now people are living just off their state unemployment, which they're not going to be able to cover.
And eventually the state's going to be like, just kidding, we're done.
The state has a limited amount of money and resources. They're not the Fed.
Especially if Trump only pays $750 in taxes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to throw it. I wanted to be topical. And,
you know what? All I want to know is, can I get Trump's accountant's phone number?
Right?
I mean,
that's the thing.
I'm not going to begrudge anybody for, making money system. Or, I'm not begrudging anybody for that. Great. Gosh, you got a smarter accountant than I do. How do I get that accountant?
That whoever that accountant law firm is, they're about to make so much money because,
I know, right?
Like, if Trump was smart, that was a stupid thing to say. He should do an affiliate account for his. Like, I'll let you know who my accountant is, but you have to pay me $1 million. Right.
Anyway, so getting back, what
Oh, yeah,
happens?
yeah.
Getting back to what happens when it's going to depend on how backlogged
Yeah.
are those courts, right? They're going to be churning out foreclosures like crazy.
So do you see, because I know a lot of banks, local regional banks, some banks will loan nationally and some banks loan only in their local areas.
Uh-huh.
If they're in
Banks
a
have already started to fail, if that's your question.
well, I was leading to that because if you're a national bank, you can kind of hedge your properties and like, okay, well, over here I've got a lot of foreclosures, but over here in this area it's pretty stable. But if all my shit is in one basket,
I'm trying to track down and I don't know who I'm tracking down, and I don't know if anybody's doing this research. Somewhere somebody is, where what is the percentage of defaults that we can sustain before it's kind of like the dam breaking, right? The dam will hold this much water, but if we go just above that, all of a sudden the entire dam breaks down. And so I don't know what the answer is, and nobody does really, because people are going, is the Fed doing enough? Have we pumped enough dollars into this? Because right now everybody knows it's being artificially supported.
well, there will be a movie about it in about 3 years. Yeah, so stay tuned. In 3 years,
there's
going to be a movie, and it's going to be Margin Call Part 2.
No joke, right? But I mean, there's a lot of very smart people who are going, hey, it took us around 5 years to get back from the Great Recession. We could be talking about a decade.
Well, not only that, but think about the emotional impact. Like, because you've got investors. Like, I know an investor. I won't name drop him, but well, I'll name drop because he says it publicly. Like, so TJ Cozen here locally.
That's who you're talking about.
Yeah, like he was a big apartment guy up into 2008. Well, as soon as you lose like $1 million, and not of only your own money but your family's money who invested with you, you're kind of like, I never want to do apartments again. So
I believe that.
He's like, I'm not touching apartments. I don't care. I get it. You can make a lot of money, but I've done that. It's kind of like dating a redhead. You date a redhead, never again.
It's not, and maybe I suffer from the same thing because pre-08, I was 100% invested, 61 rental properties, 100% invested south of 30 in Dallas. And consequently, I lost, 50% in value after the crash. Do I really want to go back down south of 30 and buy a bunch? No. I still own a bunch of it.
Yeah.
Technically, I have the notes on it now. I turned it into paper. But,
yeah.
No, I don't. I would be weary about doing that, which is why everything I buy is in Uptown Dallas.
But
where
the reason I bring this up, though, is I wonder what kind of psychological implications all the past year will have. Obviously, on people is huge, but from an investing standpoint, like, because if you were only doing this, a lot of the wholesalers learned this early on. If you're not diverse in your strategies, you're dead. And one of the jokes I've been saying around here is a lot of the so-called influencers, the reason you haven't been seeing any of those Lambo posts all summer is because the Lambo rental place was closed. So they weren't able to rent their Lambo to make those pictures.
Well, the other, and when you're also talking about those people, realtors, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we saw back in 08, 09 and 08. Like, realtors, there were so many, and they were like, we can make so much money as a realtor. And then
they're gone.
And then the Great Recession happened, right? And the market crashed, and realtors were like, oh my gosh, we can't make money. And so there's all these brand new realtors who've been doing this a year or 3 years. And I'm like, you all have no clue what you're in for.
That's got to be kind of like like a canary in the coal mine. Mm-hmm. Like, as soon as you start seeing a bunch of because real estate, like anything, is very cyclical. Real estate agents are very cyclical, meaning that sometimes you have a lot, sometimes you have a few. But I think the canary in the coal mine is when you start seeing, forgive me, I'm talking to my ex-girlfriend because I'm about to say something that's whatever. As soon as you start seeing, like, maybe the not smartest, very attractive females who are like, I have a house. Here's my bikini. Buy my house. as soon as they start being successful, you might be like, all right, is it time for another crash?
Right.
Anyway,
Well,
you
no,
see
I
where
mean,
I'm going
it's like,
with that?
I'm thinking about, I mean, and I've seen them. It's like friends of mine on Facebook who all of a sudden are contacting me going,
I'm a realtor.
I just got my real estate license. And, you know, what's going to...
And there were a stripper
And
2
depending
weeks
on
ago.
and depending on the market they're in, they're about ready to, I mean, come into a world of hurt. And then it's, you know, hopefully they're at the right brokerage, right?
Yeah.
Because what happened after the '08 crash happened, I know of like 3, and they're just top brokers in the area. They went out and got the exclusive right to sell foreclosures for certain banks or HUD, like just for the government to sell HUD foreclosures. Those are going to be, I mean,
anything exclusive is going to be is phenomenal.
right. Well, and the HUD properties, those are all the Fannie and Freddie that buy, I think over half of all the mortgages. And right now you've got a bunch of mortgage-backed securities that are starting to fail. Well,
before we move on, I do want to make a disclaimer out there. I don't think all realtors are former strippers. I don't think all attractive realtors are stupid.
Of course they not.
I just want to put that out there.
Okay.
That there is a small segment that are like that, but not all of them. Are we good?
Yeah. And
just putting it out there.
Let me also put this out there. I used to be a teacher, and I used to hate the expression "those who can't do teach." Hated that. And I go on the record and say those who can't do become realtors. By the way, Jay Lee, I love you. You know I love you. Jay Lee.
Shots fired.
Jay Lee Thompson,
good thing
broker
this is
over at Texel. She's like a gifted realtor.
Good thing this is a new channel and nobody really knows this exists yet. Like half our friends. I'm
going to have all these realtors going. It's going to be that emoji, right? The angry red with the squigglies.
Well, it's kind of like I did a video. I don't know. I filmed it back in February, but just released it maybe like a month ago. And it's one of those things where, well, no one will see it, so it's okay.
People saw it.
What?
Did people see it?
No.
Did they
No, they didn't. But it was basically me bashing anybody that calls themselves the king or the queen or whatever.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love
I'm
that.
like,
That just yeah.
You're not the king, you're not the queen, and you're not being
the
like creative.
self-proclaimed.
You're not creative. You know? So anyway. But my point to all that is we love realtors. And I love sexy realtors.
Yeah, you do.
But usually they're the first to go in a crash.
You know, and I also say this, you know, and I love, you know, I've got several realtors that I do business with on a regular basis out there, and I love them, right? They're good. And the first thing when somebody's trying to get my business, they were like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. I'll do that for, 1%. And I'm like, no. I'm like, why would I ask you to reduce your commission? I'm like, it's a tough gig anyways. Yeah. So I always pay full, and I even offer a bonus because I'm like, get my property sold in like the next week or 2 weeks and get it closed. I'm like, I'll throw a bonus on that.
This is off topic, but I'll put it out there. I recently, somebody offered me something for free. I was like, sure, I'll take it. That's awesome. And then immediately within a week, was mad at me for not being reciprocal on a much higher service.
Right.
Like, here's this thing that costs $1. Why aren't you giving me that thing that costs $100? And it's just like, so I was like, you know what? Let me just pay for it.
Yeah, the current.
So the lesson there is don't accept free shit.
The current house, I had a friend and I said, hey, do you wanna list this for me? I'm like, it's way out in BFE. I go, don't ever go there. I go, here's all the photos. Here's a walkthrough video of it. I'm like, don't put a sign out. Mm. I go, I got a combo box on it. Just, stick it in MLS and direct people to go see it. And she goes, okay, I'll do it for, 2%. And I was like, all right, well, that's cool. That's fine. She goes, do you want the one who brings the buyer to do it for 2%? I'm like, no, hell no. But, full bore. I'm like, do it for the 3%. And I'm like,
yeah.
Again, pay people what they're worth.
Well,
and that is a hard gig.
And I think the way we can wrap this into today's conversation is what happens when the shit hits the storm is if you have good people in place now, hopefully they're good enough to be around post craziness. If you're with people because you're friends with them, they may not be good enough to be around during the craziness. So you don't want to be in a situation where, hey, the shit has hit the fan. I got to find somebody who's good enough to work with now. Because guess what? Everybody's going to be doing that, and you're not. It's you never want to work with somebody who's not busy. If they're not busy, that means they're not getting work. If they're not getting work, if there's an indication that maybe they're not that good.
Hey, you know what? If they were, and anybody, realtors can make money in an up market. People are like, well, the market is super strong and prices are going up. Prices are going up for one reason and one reason only. We have very little supply, and we still have a lot of demand.
You have a huge influx from out-of-state people coming in.
Well, that, and depending on any market is like this. Even suburbs of New York City, those suburbs of New York City prices are skyrocketing because people are leaving the city and they want to buy, a house in the suburbs. There is a low supply and a lot of demand. And so anytime that happens, prices are going to go up. What I'm saying is when the moratorium ends, all of a sudden, there is going to be a huge amount of supply dumped onto the market. And what happens there? Then you've got a lot of people who have lost jobs. They're uncertain about the future of their job. So they're not going out and buying a big brand new house or doing another mortgage. They're staying put where they are. They're trying to lower costs. They're not going to try to go upsize what they currently have, right? So demand is going to go down as unemployment goes up. And, Disney just announced yesterday that they're laying off 28,000 people. Disney, who's been, relatively doing well and has remained profitable.
Just think if they didn't spend that much money on Mulan.
Yeah.
They probably could have kept all 28,000 people.
They're saying it's more the park. It's more their amusement park
Mickey
stuff.
and Minnie are unemployed now?
Basically. They might keep Minnie.
So...
But anyways,
how do we
that's
as
what
investors...
we're looking at. It's coming, right? It's coming. So you've got to look at when is all of this going to hit the market. And really, evictions are definitely until January. So we're looking January to March might be about where we start seeing all this stuff. But if you've got next spring sales... And, people are going, I want to move.
But even then, you're going to have a backup in the courts. So it's going to be... There's probably going to be a long tail of evictions and foreclosures. And in the note space, 90-day delinquents now are huge. But by the time they get to that 180 and the whatever, 100, 360 or...
there are... The 90-day delinquencies right now are double what they were before. And so they're... A lot of the surveys of why people aren't paying their mortgage, they're concerned that they're not going to have a job. So they're some of them are stockpiling cash, but others are, maxing out their credit cards right now if they're already unemployed. So what started as, okay, everybody's got $600 or, we're staying in and we're all in this together is now gonna be shit.
When have we ever been in this together?
Well, it's just gonna be shaking out. So yes, right now everybody's like, oh, the housing market's great. Yeah, it's great because of supply and demand and artificial stimulus from the Fed. As soon as, and it's because of the moratorium on foreclosures, had they just allowed everything to kind of naturally go its course, we wouldn't have this influx and dump on the market all at one time. And when that happens, prices are going to go down. And if people are still getting unemployed and unemployment's going up, which I think everybody's announcing layoffs. Yeah,
and that's one of the things that confuses me is, well, before I make my statement, Rob Johnson was saying they say mid 2021 is when it's going to start. I would like to know who who they say.
There are so many different people talking about this. There are predictions. And I read some that on papers written last week, and they're like, oh, it's not going to be as bad. And then you read another guy, and he's like, oh, it's going to be 10 times worse than it was in 2008. Where does that fall? I think a lot of that is going to depend on, one, do we get another stimulus package? But the stimulus package really just might kick it down
Yeah.
kick the can down the road another 6 or 12 months.
Here's what I don't understand though, is like, you know this way more than I know this. I know this mainly through our conversations. Rob says they know this. Like, why is it that banks aren't getting ahead of this? And by what I mean by they not getting ahead of it is there like the unpaid, when they're selling non-performers, they're trying to sell them at 80-85%.
Yeah, no, and
which is stupid.
So, and I got, I've been getting some non-performers in. Yeah, how many I got? One. I got a tape of one.
Why aren't they clearing the books now? Or what's your opinion?
I mean, September 30th is what, tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
So I think
the new quarter.
Right. So that's the end of the quarter. I think a lot of them are kind of waiting to see
how bad it was.
How bad everything is, because you're talking about thousands of banks over the nation, right? And you need to look and see, all right, what are they all reporting? What are their delinquencies looking like? Because I think if I was, a major bank, right, and I'm going to go look at my major competitors. Everybody's got their own list of competitors, right? And they're going to go review what they're reporting, their reports are for this quarter. Okay, oh my gosh, look at this. Across the board, we've all got all of these delinquencies. Yeah, I think that's going to spur some banks on to sell non-performers at a better price.
So one, what's the report that's coming out? Two, how long before it actually comes out? Is it a couple of days, the same day? Is it a couple of weeks after the end of the quarter?
It takes a little while.
And then what impact will that have? And then will you have a situation like in the movie Margin Call where it's like, let's just be first and dump it?
Okay, so
several questions.
In Margin Call, I mean, and that's actually based on a true story.
Yep.
Right? Remotely.
Several packed together.
But there were financial analysts who realized, oh my gosh, look at these numbers. Again, it's knowing at what point, the risk goes. They know what the risk load is for each of these pools of mortgages that they keep on their books, right? How much of this is safe? At what point are we going to, the whole house of cards comes tumbling down because we have too many defaults?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be a big question. If mortgage-backed securities, because people out there don't realize that mortgage-backed securities are what actually drives the available credit in borrowing money to buy a house. So that's, if there's a ton of people willing to buy these mortgages as soon as they're created,
mm-hmm.
Okay, great. If you've got a bunch of them that are failing, and there's some big ones. There's some big mortgage-backed securities out there right now that are failing. I mean, so far it's primarily been in the commercial, but the single-family mortgage-backed securities are going to start failing as well. I don't know how you couldn't have them.
Yeah.
If you've got all of these people defaulting, well, 90 days means they haven't made a payment for 90 days.
So other than just doom and gloom, we're all screwed.
Oh God, no. I mean,
let's make some money.
Right. I mean, do I ever want to repeat how I entered 08?
Mm-hmm.
No. I mean, oh God, no. I still have nightmares about how I went into it, but I was a young investor, right? I didn't know any better.
You weren't that young.
I was pretty young.
I was kidding.
I was in my late 20s when I got started, and I had 3.5 years of rush time, of the golden days before everything went to crap. But I ended up
for not biting my. I was trying to get that bait you with an age joke, and you're like, it doesn't apply to me, mother effer.
Yeah.
I'm young and whatever. Sorry, I just derailed you. Morning. All we've been doing is talking about the debates.
I know. Which we're
not gonna entertain.
Which
now.
We're not gonna talk about right now.
Yeah.
So, but after that, you can make a hell of a lot more money in a down market than you can in an up market. And I've been saying, how many years have I been saying this? I'm like, okay, it's coming. The correction's coming. Dude, I did not expect this. I'm not saying that I predicted this. This is a nightmare. This is a dumpster fire. I did not predict that.
I used to work with, and obviously, he was predicting a downturn in 2014, and then 15, and then 16.
That's because, I mean,
Yeah,
we've been ready
for it. Yeah.
We were ready for it,
because
right?
it's usually every 7 years. I didn't think it was, and it's been 12.
Yeah, but I didn't think it was 14. I thought it was, but I thought it was 2017.
Yeah.
And then 2018, and then 2019. It ended up being 2020, complete dumpster fire this year. But
wait, I will say something about the debates. Is the last night's debate was the most 2020 debate of a debate could have.
Right, yes.
If you go into the whole 2020 is all screwed, that was the debate for 2020.
I think that's a very good observation.
Yeah.
It's just par.
Yeah.
Anyways, so no, I ended up making way more money.
Yeah.
Afterwards, and so I've been saying for a couple of years, hey, I'm kind of ready for this because it culls the herd.
What are some action
items? It takes out a bunch of investors, a bunch of competitors. It really does.
So what are some action items to get ready for January, February, or summer, like Rob was saying?
Cash.
Have cash on hand?
Have cash on hand. Cash is king.
So what does that mean? Like, if you have investments, dump them if you can to get the cash?
Kind of.
Does that mean secure equity lines, credit lines?
Right now, there's still... Right now, you should be looking at your portfolios and going, is there a way... I mean, we're at the top right now. Realize that we're at the top of the market. What do? You buy low and you sell high.
Mm-hmm.
How long is this... depending on where you're at, where you're watching this from, you could be looking at a really severe price correction, especially those major markets that have humongous bubbles. It's debatable whether we do here. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really going to depend on, what type of layoffs. But
well,
I mean, I know a company that's, that's in wireless, and they've done 2 rounds of layoffs now.
But if you're in the note world, you're not really worried about a lot of these issues.
The one problem with being in the note space right now is the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, because I can't take over a non-performing note right now and then have really any credibility.
Not at 80, 85%.
Well, even at 80 or 85%, the problem is I don't know. The CDC says, okay, we're going to lift the moratorium in January. Well, what if we get to January and they're like, well, it's going to be June now. So you're not allowed to evict until June? Even if you foreclose on them, right? Even if you foreclose on them, they can just stay there for free.
Right. But if you're able to buy it at enough discount, that solves all problems.
Right. Absolutely. Maybe. Because
if you're buying it at 15%, which I'm being hyperbolic.
It's not going to be 15%. I mean, what came out, I've got some non-performing notes to present to the group. Yeah. Later today.
You were like, don't buy them, but buy them?
No. I mean, they're actually better. They're like coming in at like 60 to 70% of unpaid principal balance. That's good.
But
especially depending on what the value of that property is. But remember, right now a lot of real estate has a lot of equity in it. So we've got room to come down, but how to come down, how far it'll come down,
but on those non-performers though, and I'm just thinking out of the box at the moment, is you can come in with some pretty strong loan modification language saying, hey, I'm only offering you this right now because of Corona.
Right.
They don't need to know that you would offer that all the time, but you could actually just say that, or maybe you do want to give them some extra incentives because Corona, because the last thing you want to do is not be able to kick them out.
Well, I think really your only play,
foreclose.
To foreclose. I mean, I think your only play really is cash for keys, which I think will be expensive. I mean, typically I can get somebody out within 2 weeks for as little as, $1,000. Whereas now I don't really have any cards to play. I know that I'm not going to be able to legally evict them at least until January. And that's if I can get a court date. So really, when do I get to be able to evict them? Is it going to be February? Is it March? Rob
was saying that sub 2 and seller finance is going to be huge.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And that's why, that's why the Divas, we did a show on subject 2 a couple weeks ago. We're talking about owner finance a lot.
Owner finance with Grant.
Yeah.
And did owner finance with SHENOAH Grows.
SHENOAH Grows. Yeah. And this Friday we're doing Owner Financing 101, where we're just going to go through every ounce of it step by step on how to do a deal. So again, it's, I think that's one of the most important things. And really, it saved my bacon. Back in 2008, I started owner financing August of 2008, like right after I had problems.
To put a bow on this conversation is a wave is coming. Don't be scared. You can make money. Just be prepared. Have money, have cash ready to do it.
Have cash ready to
go.
But
also have the know-how.
But it's not all right. You've got to have some know-how. So again, try to raise cash right now. Have as much on hand as you possibly can, because that's going to make you more attractive to lenders.
What does that mean to raise cash, though? I mean, I know what it means, but usually you have a product to buy when you're raising cash.
So maybe you're going to wholesale a little bit more. I mean, I don't know that I'd be going in for a big remodel right now. That to me doesn't sound very smart, and I think most hard money lenders would also agree with me on that. I think most of them...
I don't know. I think a lot of them are coming out of the gate strong right now.
They're coming out of the gates, but is it as strong as what it was a year ago, where they were going up to, say, 85-90% of cost, or going up to 70% of ARV?
Usually hard money lenders
they're at like 60 or 65% of ARV right now.
Well, typically hard money lenders are usually regional and local,
and they understand the market extremely well. They're also, most of them that I know have been real estate investing for decades.
The point I'm trying to make is usually they're regional and local. But last November, I was in Ohio for a ReaCon, and I ran into Tom Berry and ILS out of Houston in Ohio, because he has a national product, which is awesome. But at the same time, I'm like,
Bay Mountain Capital.
Crap.
Bay Mountain Capital is my favorite. They've got more loans going right now in Georgia than they do in Texas.
Which maybe that's just an evolution of that space, or maybe it's just that's how competitive it can be.
It got to the point where Texas was just so competitive.
Yeah.
We show up at any RIAs. How many freaking hard money lenders are there?
Well, that's one thing.
That's been in the last 5-6 years, because when I was doing marketing for Bay Mountain, it would be me and maybe 5 other main guys in the room, 4 or 5.
In Phoenix, I was talking to a couple of guys out there a while back, and they're like, "Wait, you're paying how much for hard money lenders?"
Right.
And then I was like, "Yeah, I'm surprised that all these Phoenix hard money lenders aren't opening shop in like Dallas and Texas, because there they had to be like 8 and 10% to be competitive." Well, I mean, that's super competitive here. So the funny thing here, it's like 12 to 14.
That's why Bay Mountain Capital went to Georgia.
Yeah,
because
to make money.
Georgia, they were at 14, 16, and 18%.
Yeah.
And their investors are going, we only need 10 to 12, and so they're like, okay, well, we can make a ton of money here, so let's just go.
Yeah.
So, and there was not institutional hard money like what you would find here in Texas. So really, everything's regional. But, when you're looking at lenders, look at how lenders are tightening up. That's going to tell you right there, they're preparing for something to come down.
So I think the conversation there really is, raise capital, do wholesaling, make those relationships now. If you have the ability to network with people, do it now.
Mm-hmm. Get yourself set up with, lending or a lender now while things are still flowing. But make sure that you also have cash sitting in an account that you don't touch, right? Because as a previous hard money lender and as a current lender, what I look at is, all right, how long has that money been sitting there?
Yeah.
If you hand me a bank account, right, because I'm going to ask for 2 to 3 months bank statements. And if I look at those statements and like the 3 months ago and 2 months ago, you had like $5 in the account, and then all of a sudden you've got 100,000 sitting there right before, wow, you came to me looking for a loan. I'm going to question where that money came from.
Yeah.
And, so it needs to be kind of seasoned money sitting in an account. What do you have to lend with? But I can tell you right now, anybody who has cash sitting in an account is way more attractive to lenders, regardless.
And another thing is, because real estate is so cyclical, people are always jumping in, jumping out, jumping in, jumping out. if you can find a way to stay in the business.
Right.
Just because times are hectic, if you pull out, well, then you're going to lose those relationships. You're going to lose those connections. Yeah, you'll still know them, but if you're able to continually, so say you normally do 20 houses a month, come down to like 1 or 3, because then you're like, I'm still doing business.
So here's the other thing, and maybe also look at it as the types of houses you're doing, because if you're doing, $500,000 to $1 million houses, the likelihood that you're going to that the retail buyers for those might dry up in 6 months, those might be a little risky. Whereas, so maybe do 1 of those, not 10, and then come down in your value. So if you come down to, say, $200,000 houses that you could owner finance,
right,
and offer,
Well, you always have to pivot, but the point to what I was trying to make about staying in the game,
right,
is if you can find a way to stay in the game, wherever it may be, versus the person that's been out for 6 months, 9 months. If you're a lender and I've got cash and I can put cash in the guy that's still playing or the guy that took 8 months, took a year off.
Right.
You're going to go with the person that's current. And, cash is finite. And,
and they're going to ask, how many recent deals have you done? They'll want to see HUD ones. How many HUD ones? And they'll ask that. And, you'll need to, you can produce those things. So can you take time off? Yes. But there's going to be, it's actually going to be a great kind of season. It'll be a renaissance season for real estate investors, because there are going to be, we're going to get into probably a good 6 month chunk where the smart people are just going to kind of hold back and not, they're going to put the foot on the brake a little bit. They're going to take it off the gas. There's going to be, I still remember the 6 months before the market crashed in 2008. And I was like, it's like a candy shop. I'm like, I can buy, look at all of these houses that came available. Oh yeah, I got caught holding 8 when the market collapsed. And so I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Total, it was insane. Looking back at it, I was like, why would it go bad, right? Totally optimistic about everything. We're going to go through that period again. And so the people who kind of hold back and kind of watch what's going on, even if it's for 3 or 6 months, are going to go out a lot better than, because all of a sudden it's fine if maybe, you can maybe afford 1 to stop performing. But when you get caught and you've got 20 rehabs and it's a market where nothing is moving and very few, people are not going out and buying houses, or, they're looking to downsize because there's just not, there's going to be, there could be an absence of credit if mortgage-backed securities start to fail. And I hope that's not the case.
It's going to be a good time.
But if you've got people who are unemployed and lose their jobs, they are no longer in the market to go get a mortgage. And what number does that look like? And if somebody was underemployed, if somebody doesn't make their mortgage payment, right? I don't care what the reason is. You're in the middle of Corona and you were offered forbearance. Okay, you're no longer in the running to go get a new mortgage. So, you're going to take out a bunch of people out of the market.
Well, I learned something new the other day, because hopefully you learn something new every day. But Jess Marshall was doing a video with Billy Alt, Credit Repair, and one of the things that they were saying in that video is like, oh, by the way, if you dispute something online, immediately you're sabotaging yourself.
Really?
Yeah. Did you see that, Sekou?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
You waive your right for, I think he said 18 months.
Yeah.
To have
wow.
Yeah, you're waiving your right for 18 months for something. But it's just like, but who would know that?
Nobody.
No, except for the experts. So listen to the experts. To summarize, the sky is falling.
Just know that it's coming.
Yeah.
And if you know that it's coming, then you can prepare accordingly.
Educational-wise, cash-wise,
and
mentally.
Remember, you can make more money in a down market than you can in an up market, because you've got a lot less players involved.
Well, that was one of the points that was made in the debate last night about how the debate that I watched 5 minutes of was how all the millionaires and billionaires, all their money was raised. They made more money during the pandemic.
It's
because they know how to play it.
There's a long time study, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I actually believe it. And I'll give you the reason why. They say that if we went to a communist ideal, right, and we took all of the money in the entire nation and we divided it evenly among everybody, within 10 years,
the rich would still be rich.
The rich would be again, and the poor would have nothing.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of the way it is. You've got some people who are extremely good at it. I mean, look at Jewish survivors of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mean, there are, you've got people are like, oh, Jewish people, I'm like, yeah, they're extremely good at, saving, investing, creating businesses. And when
savvy.
you look at that, in one generation, a lot of them had regained their wealth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's something to be said for that. So do I think, I look at, what did he say? It was a K recovery? Which when he explained it, well, I know, because, V, you go down, then up. I'm trying to do that for the TV in the right way, or this way and then up.
You're so good. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to. But the K, he was saying that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer for Corona. Well, that's because of the people who are basically laid off.
Yeah. Who
couldn't go work remotely, you know. I get it.
At the end of the day, there's a lot of money to be made in a downturn. Even if the economy recovers, or say when it recovers, if we're being optimistic, even when the economy recovers, there's still so much backlog of foreclosures or that are in the works now that will be implemented January, February, March, all
at one time.
First 2 quarters of 2021.
Yeah, and so when those come out and then they all start flooding the market all at one time, it depresses values. Again, it's going to depend how bad it's going to be. It's going to depend on how many.
So basically, consume a shit ton of YouTube videos now. If you're not familiar with this investment type strategy, join the notes group.
Yeah.
And
learn how to buy non-performing notes.
Yeah.
Because yes, the eviction moratorium will eventually be lifted.
Yeah.
You will be allowed to evict and foreclose eventually. It might be somewhat small investment to just kind of have sitting there until you can go take care of it.
So I think that basically summarizes everything we talked about. If you would, please like, subscribe, comment below. All those things help the channel grow. We do have a fairly new YouTube channel. And so if you're watching on Facebook, appreciate it. Like the page. Currently don't even have a little picture there yet. I need to fix that.
Yeah, you do.
I'm in the process of hiring somebody else right now to help around the studio. And then I'm Ryan S. Harper on Instagram. Follow me, don't follow me. It's okay. I'm a nobody. But KRISTIN.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to talk about myself? Okay. Hi, I'm KRISTIN GERST. I'm with Capricorn Mortgage Investments. I want to buy your mortgage notes. Performing, I would love. I'm desperate for them right now. And I've got blank checkbook for those. So if you've got performing mortgage notes, send them to me at the email down below, and follow me on Instagram. So you can see what, Ryan and I do on a daily basis, hanging out in the studio.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everybody watching. That's about it for today. If you're in our notes group, we'll be live again in about 30 minutes for the private stuff. And we'll be doing this. This is fairly new for us, but we're planning on doing this every Monday and Wednesday. I would like to say 10, but apparently it's 10-ish.
It's 10-ish because I was late today.
Yes. So every Monday and Wednesday, KRISTIN and I will be on here doing stuff. And then maybe every other week we'll do some supplemental stuff. I'd like to point out
I was working and doing, gainfully employed stuff.
Cares.
They do care.
Nobody cares.
They like to know that I'm actually a real investor.
Nah.
If I've got a notes group, I'm not like some guru who just poses on the Ferrari.
You don't have a Ferrari?
I don't have a Ferrari.
Oh, well.
I need to change that.
So that's about it. All you gotta do, Sekou, is push the red and then